there's a monster hiding in the remote forests, swamps, and rivers of the Congo Basin in Central Africa. It has a long neck, looks like a dinosaur, and is the size of an elephant, or maybe a hippo at least. That's what people who claim to have seen it say. It should have gone extinct millions of years ago, but this Congo's version of the Loch Ness Monster somehow survived. This creature is the Mokele Mbembe, which means one who stops the flow of rivers, and more folks are saying they've seen it lately. European explorers first heard the stories of this creature from the people living near the Congo River in the early 1900s. A German captain even included a description of the monster in his official report from his expedition. The locals told him the animal was of a brownish-gray color with smooth skin, a very flexible neck, and only one long tooth that could be a horn. Some of them mentioned a long, muscular tail, like that of an alligator. They also said that the creature lived in the caves, but climbed the shores even in the daytime to find some plants to eat. Locals also believed its favorite snack was a kind of liana with large white blossoms. Some of them even showed the German captain some fresh path the monster left leading next to those plants. And they warned him that Mokele Mbembe definitely didn't like humans and took down any canoe that would sail nearby. Dinosaurs were a real hit in pop culture in the 1910s, and several newspapers in Europe and North America wrote about the dino-like monster from Africa back then. In the later years, several expeditions traveled to the Congo Basin to search for Mokele Mbembe or interview claimed witnesses. They did not find any direct physical evidence, but collected many stories. One zoologist in the 1980s said he took a film of Mokele Mbembe, but the footage did not develop properly. Stories and movies like Jurassic Park have kept the dream alive that dinosaurs might still be hiding somewhere in deep forests. At some point, people stopped reporting sightings of the creature as often, so it almost became a forgotten legend. But it all changed recently, as many people claim to have witnessed the mythical monster with their own eyes. Cryptozoologists, those fans of mysterious creatures, believe it could be a dinosaur that, for some reason, didn't go extinct, related to a Brachiosaurus or a Diplodocus. This idea comes from how people describe seeing the creature, with a super long neck, a huge body, and a tiny head. They think it might have stayed hidden in the deep forests of Africa all this time. But scientists say that if it really were the last living dinosaur, we would have found some real proof by now, like a photo or bones or something showing it walking around the Congo Basin. Some expeditions that are trying to find proof the monster is real have even used sonar technology to scan the murky waters of Central African rivers and lakes in search of any large, unidentified creatures. Some people even narrowed down the monster's location to a specific remote lake, surrounded by untouched jungle in the swamps. So far, the search for evidence hasn't been successful. The explanation behind all the sightings of the Mokele Mbembe could be the changing ecosystem. More and more human settlements are moving into the huge Congo Basin rainforest. People aren't used to seeing large animals that live in the forest, so they believe they have witnessed the mysterious creature from their folklore. The human brain often fills in the gaps in something we don't know and uses imagination to explain it, especially if there's a ready-made version that everyone's heard of. But still, we can't completely rule out the possibility that there are some new, unknown species of animals hiding in the Congo forests. Maybe just not a missing dinosaur. Another legend, this time Mongolian, says there's a giant worm living deep in the Gobi Desert. Yep, similar to the monster you've seen in Dune. The creature, which is supposedly up to 6 feet long, can spit acid that could melt anything and shoot electricity. They say it spends most of its days hiding underneath the sandy dunes, but likes to come out during the wetter months of June and July. The people in the West first found out about the megaworm of the Gobi Desert thanks to an American paleontologist, Roy Chapman Andrews. This brave man was probably the inspiration for Indiana Jones. In 1926, he wrote about the creature in his book. At the meeting with Mongolian leaders, Andrews heard detailed descriptions of the creature, even though none of them had ever seen it themselves. One of them said it looked like a sausage that was about 2 feet long, with no head or legs. According to him, the worm was so poisonous that just touching it could instantly take your life, and it lived in the loneliest parts of the Gobi Desert. Andrews didn't think the creature was real, but he shared these stories again in another book. And then, stories of the monster spread around the world. In some of them, it's only 1 foot long. In others, it's as large as a human. Some say it looks like a snake, and some describe it as a caterpillar. Some people claim it has wings and can fly, and others think it could be a supernatural evil being without a body. The color of the creature also remains a subject of debate. It could be white-gray, brown, or even bright red. The stories of witnesses are probably so different because the creature doesn't even exist. In 1983, one scientist who was visiting the region heard that an old man had managed to finally catch the mysterious worm. He also found out there was a nest nearby and decided to risk it all and see it. But instead of a scary monster, there was a tartar sand boa inside. Luckily for the scientist, this snake is non-venomous, but it does have gray-brown scales and could match the description of the giant worm. When he showed it to the locals, supposedly all of them said it was the monster they had seen. Big expeditions from America, Britain, and New Zealand came to the Gobi Desert to try and find the creature. Many other adventurers came from all around the world on their own, but found no evidence the monster was real. But many Mongolians are sure the death worm is no fantasy. If you don't believe there's a monster in the Gobi Desert, how about one in Lake Worth in Texas? According to local folklore, there's a part human, part goat creature with scales and long clawed fingers hiding there. It all started back in July 1969, when locals claimed to have spotted this mysterious creature roaming around. The newspapers loved the story and started reporting about new sightings. One article said that the monster jumped out of a tree and landed on some guy's car. Another report claimed that the Lake Worth monster decided to throw an automobile tire at a group of people. Someone even managed to take a photo of the creature, and the newspapers published it. Locals started flocking to the lake at night, hoping to catch a glimpse of the creature, but no one could find any evidence it was real after all. The author of the monster's photograph later said it was most likely someone's prank, because the creature really wanted to be seen. Then, a reporter from the local newspaper received an anonymous letter saying that it was 3 high school students who decided to dress up and scare people. Even despite this, some cryptozoologists think it could have been an undiscovered primate species that walks on 2 legs. We don't know if the Worth monster is real, but it does one good thing and brings together the local community. Every year since 2009, they throw the Lake Worth Monster Bash.
Well, it seems we got dinosaurs completely wrong. Plus, the movies created an image of them that's hard to get out of the head now. You know what I'm talking about? Dinosaurs as giant lizards. I mean, lizards are cool. There's a type of lizard found in the streams of Costa Rica that can stay under the water for up to 16 minutes. They create a pocket of air at the top of their snout and breathe exhaled air while submerged. So-called horned lizards can spout blood out of their eyes, shooting it up to 6 feet. Poor lizard has to do it when it gets closer to the mouth of its attacker, since this bad taste makes a predator change their mind and go after some more delicious bites. Then there's the basilisk lizard that can run over water while making its escape from bigger animals in the rainforests of Central America. They can do that for short distances, but still, it gets to rear up and rely on flaps of skin on the toes of its hind legs to have more surface area. Many types of lizards have had to develop such unusual adaptations, so they didn't become an easy, quick snack for snakes, coyotes, hawks, foxes, and other big animals going after them. They wouldn't have to do it if they had some giant cousins that would protect them, like dinosaurs. But even though they look like gigantic, scary lizards in the movies, it's not what you would see if you had the chance to go back to the Dino Age. You'd have to be aware and run if you saw feathery creatures instead. Feathers don't sound that scary because birds are the only animals alive today that have them. But millions of years ago, it was a different story. Some of the most fearsome dinosaurs were covered in feathers too, of different shapes, sizes, and colors. For example, check this fella, a cousin of the famous T-Rex. It was a scary predator that weighed 1.5 tons and was covered in a shaggy coat of filaments, known as protofeathers. These feathers were not used for flying, but to stay warm or attract mates. Or take a velociraptor, for example. For so long, we've believed it's a sleek predator with the skin of a lizard. But it turns out it was a much smaller, colorful creature covered in feathers, like some sort of bird. Many of their dino relatives had pretty long feathers all over their forearms, together with downy feathers that were spread across the rest of the body. This works for most of the meat-eating dinosaurs, or so-called theropods. There were tiny ones with a tail fan full of feathers, or those with shiny feathers in a mix of colors. It was similar to a hummingbird. Maybe it wouldn't be that scary to face dinosaurs after all. Some of the fossils researchers found are well preserved. In combination with modern techniques they used to study these fascinating creatures, they found out dinosaurs came in different colors. Archaeologists found some fossilized feathers together with fossils of melanosome structures. Those are pigments that gave them gray, brown, and black colors, like Anchiornis, whose body was almost entirely black. It's reminiscent of a bird with wings and fluffy tail feathers on his hind legs, together with a pretty long tail that could fan out. This fella had white stripes along its wings, too. It also had a brown head crest. This one was perhaps there as a display or used to communicate with other Anchiornis dinosaurs. And check out this one. It also had a bristly tail and different markings on its body. Thanks to the fossils they found, researchers have been able to reconstruct the appearance of this dinosaur, giving it so many details. Not only did dinos look like birds, but they also behave similarly to them. For example, they sat on their nests to protect their eggs and most likely used their feathers for displays. There was a discovery in Canada that revealed one type of dinosaur had a fleshy crest on its head, like a rooster's comb. Scientists think this crest was likely used as a way to attract a mate or show off to other dinosaurs. Then there's the scariest of them all in the dinosaur kingdom, the T-Rex. Can you imagine this one in a birdie version? Also, you may have seen pictures of T-Rex with its big sharp teeth and its jaws wide open, kind of always ready to bite into its prey. But these images might be completely wrong. Some recent research tells us these top predators might have had something that we take for granted in almost all land animals today: lips. Now think about it. When you look at a crocodile or an alligator, you don't see any lips covering their teeth. So everyone has always assumed that their prehistoric relatives, theropod dinosaurs, were the same way. Well, not quite. Researchers looked at fossilized dinosaur skulls and compared them to modern reptiles, and found out these dinosaurs likely had soft tissue around their mouths that functioned like lips. Scientists learned this while studying small passageways in the upper jaws of dinosaur skulls, something called foramina. Foramina allows blood vessels and nerves to reach the soft tissues around the mouth. In lipped reptiles like lizards, these foramina are arranged in a line along the edge of the jaw near the teeth. Scientists examine the enamel of the teeth too. When enamel dries out, it wears down more easily. The researchers found that the side of alligator teeth that is continuously exposed erodes more like the wetter side facing the inside of the mouth. However, in theropods like T-Rex, the teeth have an even wear pattern. This tells us teeth were kept covered and moist. Based on this, scientists believe theropods with long, sharp teeth, like T-Rex, could also close their mouths with their teeth inside. The teeth of theropods and monitor lizards are similar in size, and monitor lizards can close their mouths completely. Therefore, it's likely that theropods also had lips that allowed them to fully close their mouths. However, it's not known if they wore lipstick. Interestingly, the study also revealed a neat row of jaw foramina in a pretty cool extinct early cousin of crocodilians. Also, lips may have been present in the earliest archosaurs, a group of reptiles that gave rise to dinosaurs and crocodilians. Now, this might not seem like a big deal, but it truly changes how we think about how these dinosaurs ate. If they had lips, it's possible that they could have controlled their bites more precisely, and maybe even chewed their food instead of just tearing it apart. Some still believe differently, saying T-Rex and other theropods had flat scales like crocodiles all the way down to the edges of their jaws. So I guess the mystery of dinosaur lips continues. Now you might be wondering, did sauropod dinosaurs like the titanosaur have feathers too? Some scientists believe all dinosaurs, including sauropods, had feathers. Just as you can see all mammals have at least some hair, but big mammals like elephants have limited hair. So it's possible that sauropods didn't have many feathers. Since feathers are something you'll stumble upon in a fossilized shape, the chances of finding those of sauropods or similar dinosaurs are definitely lower. Plus, there's a chance big dinosaurs that lived in warm weather didn't have feathers at all. Many of these feathered dinosaur fossils have been found in China. These fossils have helped us understand the transition from feathered dinosaurs to birds. Because birds could be the only animals that survived and are around today that are directly related to dinosaurs. Ooh, I wonder what happened here. It could be that some kinds of theropods started hiding in trees more while searching for food and protection, so their bodies evolved to become even smaller to survive harsh conditions and dangerous predators lurking after them. But still, it's a transition from the most incredible predator the animal kingdom has seen to squawking chickens. Talk about how evolution mostly moves animals forward. Hey, stop it! I didn't mean it! Hey, it's possible that Jurassic World is not just a fantasy. Dinosaurs could really be walking, swimming, or flying around somewhere out there, but not on Earth. Some scientists think there may be planets far, far away from our solar system where slightly different versions of T-Rex and other dinosaurs live. They got the idea based on the fact that our planet used to have about 30% higher oxygen levels than today. That's why complex and intelligent life forms like dinosaurs could develop in the first place. They also want to explore basic building blocks that are the reason why we have life on Earth. These building blocks are something we know as amino acids. They make protein, sugars, and genetic material, RNA and DNA. They're consistent and mainly exist in one shape or orientation. There are two ways they can be oriented, right and left. That means they mirror each other, just like our hands. It's something we call chirality. For life to exist, proteins must have one form, which means they can be oriented right or left. On our home planet, almost all living things, from the smallest bugs to whales and elephants, have amino acids with a left-handed orientation. We're not exactly sure why things are set that way, but there's a theory that's because of meteorites that crash-landed on Earth 4 billion years ago. They brought specific kinds of amino acids and some other organic materials to our planet, and somehow set the pattern we have today. Maybe we could use special telescopes we created to search planets, especially those where conditions are similar to how they used to be on Earth back in time when dinosaurs existed. In that case, it would be better to watch them from a safe distance, because considering what they might look like, researchers say it might be a safer choice. That's a cool idea, but it's still very tricky. The history of life on our planet, especially that of dinosaurs, involved many catastrophic events and mass extinctions. There's always more room for new theories about dinosaurs. One of them says oil comes from dinosaurs. Interesting, but not true. Oil formed from the remains of sea animals and plants from millions of years ago. This was way before dinosaurs appeared. Tiny organisms ended up at the bottom of the sea. As bacteria decomposed animals and plants, they removed most of the oxygen and some other elements from them, It left behind only a sludge, which was mostly made of hydrogen and carbon. As time passed, those remains became covered with many layers of silt and sand. When the depth of the sediment increased to 10,000 feet or even more, heat and pressure turned the remains into natural gas and crude oil. It's possible that dinosaurs lived or fell in the sea and later became petroleum in the same manner, but no one has ever found crude oil containing their skeletons. So this is just an unproven theory. Then there's the feathered dinosaur theory, which, unlike the previous one, seems to have more foothold in reality. Back in 2010, researchers found evidence that 100 million years ago, there had been a dino species with ginger feathers. Another group of scientists claimed there had been a different species from 150 million years ago. Those dinos had freckles and reddish-brown feathers on the tops of their heads. The color patterns probably had their purpose. Maybe it was a way to communicate with other representatives of their species or to attract mates. But years later, scientists studied the Microraptor, also called a feathered dinosaur. They realized it had probably been more like a bird than a dinosaur. The key point is how birds replace their feathers. Birds that fly have to replace their feathers in a specific order, otherwise they won't be able to fly very well. And the Microraptor's fossils showed that this creature had changed its feathers in a similar pattern. So they're not really sure which category this animal falls into. Dinosaurs that had feathers shed a lot of their skin piece by piece, like dandruff. "Hey Bob, looking a little flaky there. Need a new shampoo?" Yeah, they didn't shed their skins like lizards do, as if they take off an old suit. When we talk about dinosaurs, we usually don't picture them as social creatures, more like isolated ones similar to lizards. But some researchers discovered an 80-million-year-old collection of clutches in the Gobi Desert. It means there were colonies of dinosaurs that protected their nests and guarded their young, similar to birds. Crocodiles are known for doing that too. Pterosaurs were flying dinosaurs, and pelycosaurs were fin-backed ones. Some studies have shown that these two species use their exaggerated head crests and sails or fins to get to their potential partners. There are many theories about their crests and what they were needed for, though. Some experts believe that was how dinosaurs regulated their temperature. Others think they needed a crest to steer through the air. It's hard to say anything for sure since their fossils are rare and they don't have living descendants. But the most likely option is that the crest had the same purpose as a peacock's tail and was used for selecting mates. The bigger the crest, the more chances a pterosaur had to get a partner. You know theropods, those scary meat-eating predators that are shown in most dinosaur movies? Well, they might have enjoyed eating plants way more than tearing flesh. Not all of them, but it's possible that many of them weren't as fierce as we might think. Those big scary ones, like T-Rex, could be exceptions rather than the rule. The thing is, movies show these creatures to be way faster than they probably were in reality. They could probably run just a little bit more quickly than the average human runner. Scientists study the diet of coelurosaurs. Those seem to be the closest relative to birds. It was hard to figure it out because some of the dinos from this group had peg-like teeth, or in some cases, no teeth at all. To understand what they ate, researchers had to look for direct evidence and check if there was anything in their stomachs. And after they discovered certain things, including a beak with no teeth, they realized these fellas had followed a vegetarian diet most of the time. Even some famous ones, such as velociraptors, could be just innocent plant eaters and not terrifying beasts from Jurassic Park and our childhood nightmares. Over 10 years ago, scientists found fossils of a small dinosaur. It was a creature as big as a parrot with long legs. It came from a family with some of the most famous predators we know about, such as T-Rex and Velociraptor. Most dinosaurs that lived on land had 5 fingers, but later some of them ended up with fewer fingers. This new one they discovered was special because instead of having 3 fingers, which was more common for its family, it had just 1 finger with a sharp curved nail at the end of each front limb. This creature probably used this 1 finger to dig into insects' nests to feast. Even though we know all about the asteroid that wiped out dinosaurs, some have other theories. One paleontologist even had an idea that dinosaurs had possibly reached their end because they had been eating one another. This especially worked for ancestors of fierce, scary predators such as the Tyrannosaurus rex. It's possible they ate so many eggs of other dinosaurs that many species just went extinct. Once they started eating the eggs of very big dinos that we know as sauropods, it's possible they started getting bigger too. And no dinosaur mother could stop them from eating her eggs because she couldn't be around all the time. There were other big predatory animals that ate eggs, even early mammals. But in any case, Later research showed dinosaurs couldn't have eaten enough eggs to have caused mass extinction. And that's all I have to say about that. Big herds of dinosaurs run through the forest. The temperature rises rapidly, and everything behind them begins to ignite. Some dinosaurs get stuck in swamps and can't get out. Pterodactyls fly over their heads as they try to avoid the blast wave that will soon cover the Earth. This event happened about 66 million years ago. It wiped out almost every living thing on Earth. Birds and flying dinosaurs were just about the only ones who could survive the most massive extinction event ever. Hey, don't blame me, I wasn't around then. Let's go down their evolutionary tree to look at the world's first bird, Archaeopteryx. It was about the size of a modern raven, but it looked like a small dinosaur with feathers. It had many small conical teeth, almost like alligators. It's because Archaeopteryx was closer to reptiles than to birds. However, its brain was 3 times larger than that of these reptiles. Although it had wings with feathers, it could hardly fly like modern birds. Its shoulder joints didn't allow it to lift its wings above its back, so it couldn't make a full wing beat. Most likely, Archaeopteryx was capable of gliding flights with small wing flaps. Evolution has led to more evolved species capable of full flight. Pterodactyls. These guys had no feathers, but membranes made of skin and muscle. Its wingspan was about the length of a human leg. It could fly perfectly and catch fish and small animals. Although flying dinosaurs could easily outrun terrestrial predators like velociraptors and T-Rexes, most of them didn't make it through the impact of a giant meteorite. Let's look at this event step by step to see how they got to our time. 10 minutes before the meteorite crash. A massive rock about the size of Manhattan Island is moving towards Earth in space. It weighs 460 trillion tons. That's like 3 trillion blue whales, the heaviest mammals that ever lived on Earth, and it's approaching our planet at 12 miles per second. At that speed, it could cross the Atlantic Ocean in just 4.5 minutes. That's twice as fast as our modern spacecraft could fly. 5 seconds before the meteorite crash. Ooh, this is getting tense. The Earth's gravitational force continues to pull the giant meteorite. It blows a hole in our atmosphere and creates a popping sound so loud you could hear it on the other side of our planet. All the animals on our planet wake up in a panic. They lift their heads up and see a huge rock that begins to burn through the air. Smaller fragments start to break away from the main meteorite. This fire is so bright that it shines almost like the sun. Flying dinosaurs and other ancestors of modern birds are the first to sense danger. They make a beeline to the sky and try to fly as far away from the impact site as possible to save their lives. The moment of impact. The colossal mass and velocity of the meteorite give it an enormous amount of energy. As soon as it touches the Earth, it causes an explosion of 150 trillion tons of TNT. The blast wave literally rips out chunks of our planet and throws them up. A huge wall of energy begins to move from the point of impact in all directions. It snatches the trees out with their roots and pushes them to the ground like dominoes. The shockwave completely wraps around our planet. This energy turns into heat. Everything around the impact site begins to ignite. Green jungles and trees turn into smoldering charcoal in seconds. The ground and rocks simply evaporate. The collision caused a massive earthquake. Some dinosaurs may have fallen into cracks that appeared in the ground. A strong earthquake caused a tsunami, with waves higher than the Empire State Building. Dinosaurs that weren't trapped in the burning forest were washed away by the enormous waves. The dinosaurs of North America tried to escape by running to the north, but the blast wave inevitably catches up with them. Flying dinosaurs have no problem with earthquakes or tsunamis. They fly high enough to avoid the giant waves, but they will have to contend with continuously falling meteorite debris. 5 minutes after the meteorite crash. A meteor shower of giant rock fragments continues to fall to Earth. Some meteorites were the size of a car, others were more like a large building. Ashes and dust rise into the air. Their temperature is so high that they melt and turn into liquid lava and then fall back to Earth, causing more fires. Meteor showers cause trouble for flying dinosaurs too. They have to maneuver and dodge the falling red-hot rocks. The high temperatures are a huge problem for them because it might make them lose feathers. With no feathers, they aren't able to fly. 10 hours after the meteorite crash. The dinosaurs continuously ran north all this time. They found themselves in unfamiliar territory with many swamps. Giant dinosaurs like T-Rexes have legs as long as an adult human's height. They have a chance to get through this terrain, But if they fell, they could never get back up. The smaller dinosaurs, like Triceratops, had short legs and couldn't grow through the dense swamps. 1 month after the meteorite crash, 15 trillion tons of ash were ejected into our atmosphere. A dark cloud blocked the sun, and the Earth was immersed in complete darkness. Surviving plants couldn't feed on the sun's energy and stopped producing oxygen. Surviving dinosaurs could hardly breathe because of the lack of air and a large amount of dust. The lack of sunshine in the sky made phytoplankton disappear. Many marine animals were left without their only source of food. The dust and ashes in the atmosphere prevent our planet from getting heat from the sun, and the temperature here is beginning to drop. The place where the meteorite fell was rich in sulfur. This toxic acid evaporated at the time of the impact and formed in clouds. Now there are acid rains on Earth. Flying dinosaurs now have to hide from these rains. They have to stay in caves and can't go outside to get some food. So far, a large number of terrestrial and flying dinosaurs have survived. They come out to see the aftermath of the disaster. The site of the impact was in present-day Mexico, the Yucatan Peninsula. The Chicxulub crater is located here. It's about 93 miles wide, like half of all of Lake Michigan, and it's 12 miles deep. You could plunge the whole Mount Everest in there, and there would still be 6.5 miles of available space. It wasn't the impact itself that made the dinosaurs disappear. The fire destroyed most of the plants the herbivorous dinosaurs ate. With no food, their numbers dwindled rapidly. Predatory dinosaurs had nothing to eat either. Acid rain and the disappearance of phytoplankton threatened all marine life. Even though birds managed to avoid the blast waves and tsunami, they were short of food too. About 80% of all birds didn't make it to the end of the extinction event. The problem was that all of the forests on Earth were wiped out. Most birds would nest and live in trees. Besides that, the forests were always full of food, from all kinds of ants and termites to flying insects and small mice. So, only those species that lived on the ground and could fly well survived. Most likely, they fed on the seeds of small surviving plants. This habit made flying dinosaurs lose their teeth during evolution. Instead of jaws with a bunch of sharp teeth, they got long beaks to grab tiny seeds from the ground. Although Earth looks like a terrible place to live now, there's an evolutionary boom for birds. They have to travel long distances in search of food. Their wings get stronger. They also feel safe from predators who regarded them as food before. No T-Rex now catches a sleeping bird off guard. About 1,000 years after the collision, the first dense forests appear. It gives another boost to evolution. 1 million years later, forests full of food are populated by the ancestors of modern mouse birds. And 65 million years later, in modern times, we have about 10,000 species of birds. Pigeons, crows, eagles, and hawks, even penguins. These are all descendants of the dinosaurs. But there were other survivors. Some alligator and crocodile ancestors were able to adapt to changing conditions. About 80% of turtle species managed to survive the mass extinction, and now their descendants live among us. Snakes and lizards were also able to wait out the hard times in their burrows. Even some mammals, like monotremes, survived. This hedgehog-sized animal was able to continue to evolve. Many millions of years later, these mammals evolved into primates, which later gave life to modern humans. Much later came the iPhone. Baby T-Rex was adorable. There, I said it. Hard to imagine those two words in the same sentence, but come on, even Big Bad T-Rex didn't pop out of its shell all big, scary, and fully grown. In its first few months on Earth, Baby T was a cute, fluffy, turkey-sized ball of fuzz. It was kind of like a weird-looking bird coming out of an oversized egg. Not enough food, dangerous surroundings, asteroids. Poor baby Ts were so helpless and weak, only about half of them made it to their first birthday party. Scientists think their fuzz was there to keep them warm when they were still small and vulnerable. Plus, it helped them camouflage and stay safe. Baby Ts didn't have big, sharp teeth, yet. So, they mostly munched on smaller reptiles and insects. Baby Ts grew up pretty fast. They put on up to 6 pounds a day. Hey, I've done that. No, not really, just felt like it. The weirdest fact about them? When they were little, their arms looked totally normal compared to their bodies. But by the time they were full grown, their parents were super famous. Plastered all over t-shirts, that would be a T-Rex t-shirt, movies, and the greatest Halloween costume ever, in my humble opinion. But the T-Rex we know and love didn't really exist. First of all, speed. They weren't really that fast. In the movies, you could never get away from them, even if the path was clear and you were in a pretty decent car. Early predictions were that T-Rexes could run somewhere between 10 and 30 miles an hour, which is whoa. But recent research shows they could only reach around 12 miles per hour. Anything more than that would have shattered their massive bones. So relax. After a couple months of training, even the most dedicated couch potato could get away from the sharp teeth of this guy. And what about our good friend Stegosaurus? It lived around 150 million years ago, so it didn't even get the chance to meet those cute baby T's. They appeared much later. We all recognize this dinosaur. It's the one with those ridiculous upright plates on its back. They were sometimes up to 3 feet tall. You could hide behind one. Scientists still don't really know why they had them, but they think Stegosaurus could have regulated blood flow through them, like a massive bony thermostat. They also believe these dinos could use the same system to control their skin color, depending on whether they wanted to look good or look scary. Sounds impressive, right? Well, at least something about them does, because this poor thing had a brain that weighed just a tiny bit more than a tennis ball and was around the size of a walnut. That's a dog's brain in a hippo's body. Troodon was one of the most brainy dinosaurs. A great all-around fella, excellent hunter, stereoscopic vision, 6 feet long, and a brain that just won't quit. What a catch! Troodon's remains were one of the first dinosaur discoveries in North America. One of the weirdest members of the dinos was definitely, well, let's just call her Sue. If you met her, you'd feel like you're looking at a big turkey rat thing with a super furry body. It might be the long-lost grandma of the modern ground sloth. Its buddy, Pegamastax, definitely wasn't far behind when it comes to racking up the weirdo points. It looked like something between a porcupine and parrot. But don't say that to its face, it had a couple of pointy teeth that could sharpen against one another. The largest and one of the heaviest known dinosaurs was Argentinosaurus. No one ever found a complete skeleton, but this beast must have weighed about 100 tons and was about 130 feet long. Compare it to the biggest animal we have now, the blue whale. It's only 100 feet long. When someone says dinosaur, you probably imagine some big-as-a-building beast that could use a tree as a toothpick. Some of them were gigantic, true, like those long-neck, long-tailed dinos. Those things were as long as an airplane. But many of them were small and lightweight, some of them the size of pigeons. The smallest dinosaur skeleton ever found was a tiny mouse lizard. Some dinosaurs had tails that were more than 45 feet long. That way, it was easier for them to keep their balance when running. But they didn't drag their tail along the ground. Dinosaurs kept pretty active and were quite fast, so they kept their tails in the air most of the time. Even though that naughty asteroid wiped most of them out, a lot of dino DNA stuck around and morphed into animals we know today, like birds. The first time anyone even thought of linking the two together was after they discovered a primitive bird in Germany, Cergut. Later, researchers classified 2 groups of dinosaurs, depending on what kind of hips they had. The first group looked pretty familiar. They had lizard-like hips. The second group had bird-like hips. And a third group looked like Shakira, which is where her tune My Hips Don't Lie comes from. Actually, no. Also, plenty of old-school carnivores had bones filled with air, which is something birds have too. Birds may be the dinosaurs' living descendants, but some animals actually witnessed the age of dinosaurs. If only they could talk. Snakes, bees, sharks, crabs, lobsters, yum, crocodiles, cockroaches, even green sea turtles. They all actually saw real dinosaurs. So jealous. Carnivore dinos mostly walked on 2 feet. That way they could be faster and have their hands free to grab a little snackosaurus. Plant eaters walked on 4 feet so they could carry their heavy bodies. Some of the bigger plant eaters needed around a ton of food per day, literally. Imagine animals so big they had to eat a house-sized pile of veggies on a daily basis. Still, a huge bush a day keeps the doctor away. Is that where that started? There are around 700 known species of extinct dinosaurs. Sounds like a lot, but we probably haven't discovered them all. 5 years back, they found out about a new type of dinosaur. It had these stubby horns right above its eyes, which looked so much like the comic book character. They named it Hellboy. Hop on the bright side of life together with our brand new tees, hoodies, and more. Click the link to pick your choice. In the 90s, scientists discovered a crater in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. You know the story. Around 66 million years ago, a meteor the size of Mount Everest hit our planet and filled the atmosphere with dust, gas, and debris that caused a serious climate catastrophe. It triggered a heat wave and a blast wave that went up into the atmosphere, partially blocking out the sun. Game over. Thanks for playing, dinosaurs. The age of humans never crossed over with the dinosaur era. Dinosaurs disappeared more than 60 million years ago, but they existed on Earth for 160 million years. Modern-looking humans have only been around for about 250,000 years. Only 59 million years to go, people. Not all the dinosaurs were on vacation in Mexico when the asteroid hit. They lived all over the globe. Some lived in deserts, while others lived in areas near ancient rivers surrounded by thick forests and rich vegetation. They weren't too picky, so they lived wherever, even Antarctica. But it wasn't covered in snow back then. Both poles had forests growing on them. Most people imagine all dinosaurs to be grayish-green because of the movies. Plus, we usually just think of them as giant lizards. Scientists still don't know much about dinosaur skin tones, but researchers recently found some evidence that dinosaurs totally embrace the rainbow. One little guy had white and orange rings on his tail. Dinosaur is Greek for terrible lizard. Scientists used to think dinosaurs were mostly cold-blooded like snakes, lizards, or other reptiles. Turns out they were wrong, maybe. Some evidence pointed to them being warm-blooded like mammals. Somewhere in 2014, scientists discovered that most dinosaurs were mesotherms, a little of this, a little of that. And it turned out many of them had feathers, just like little baby teeth. It helped them regulate their body temperature. Another thing we got from the movies and totally thought was real, what dinosaurs sound like. Producers usually mix together a bunch of animal noises to get that authentic dino roar. T-Rex is usually a mix of alligator, tiger, and the squealing of a baby elephant. And that dreaded T-Rex breath? It was just the sound of air going through a whale's blowhole.
Are you sure that it was an asteroid that caused the extinction of dinosaurs? There's this huge drama about why these horrifying creatures disappeared. It's a big deal in both science and movies. But what really happened to the dinos? How do scientists figure it out? And why does it even matter? Let's see. Let's take a trip back to England in 1842. There was a scientist named Sir Richard Owen. He was checking out some huge reptile fossils and noticed that 3 of them, Megalosaurus, Iguanodon, and Hylaeosaurus, had a lot in common. So he had this light bulb moment and decided to combine all these creatures into Dinosauria, which means terrible lizards in Greek. The scientists were studying dinosaurs and grouping them based on their looks. But then Charles Darwin showed up and gave even a better idea. Turns out, species don't just appear out of thin air, they evolve. And now, everyone had to rethink how they were defining dinosaurs. They came up with a new idea called phylogenetic classification. Picture a big family tree with all creatures ever. Somewhere up there, we find Megalosaurus and Iguanodon, and we say all dino descendants come from their common ancestor. It's like tracing back your family tree, and if we go far enough, we find the ultimate dino ancestor. Sounds like a plan. But then, things got a bit complicated. When we talk about dinos, we've got the ones with feathers and beaks and the ones without. That's when we found out that birds are cousins to certain dinosaurs, maybe even evolved from them. After learning that, scientists had to look at the bird family tree and rethink the dino definition. In the end, they decided that birds are kinda dinosaurs, but not exactly. Confusing, huh? But in any case, now we have 2 groups. The first one is birds, and the other one is non-avian dinosaurs, which are extinct. That means now we have to reconsider our question. Instead of asking what caused the extinction of dinosaurs, it should be what caused the extinction of non-good dinos. The answer might seem simple. People often think of a gigantic space rock as the dino destroyer. It's probably the first thing that pops into your mind. Even Google and other search engines agree on this one, like best friends copying each other's homework. History teaches us that about 66 million years ago, dinosaurs totally vanished, except for the ones that became birds. Of course, the truth is more complicated. And not all dinos vanished in one go. Some went the natural way, and there were many extinctions here and there during their time on Earth. But the big event we're talking about looks like a movie scene change. Like suddenly changing the channel on a TV. One poof. And the Earth went from the time of dinosaurs to the time of mammals. Scientists call these time periods the Cretaceous and Paleogene. We even give this special event a nickname, the KPG, or KT extinction. Some even refer to it as the 65 million years ago event, even though the more correct number is 66 million years ago. We've got two main theories in the spotlight: asteroids crashing and volcanoes erupting like crazy. Let's talk about the asteroid idea. So, around 66 million years back, imagine a humongous asteroid smacking into Earth. This thing was about 6 miles wide, about as big as Mount Everest. It zoomed through the sky super fast, like a mountain going 100 times the speed of sound. And when it hit, it released a ton of energy. It crashed down in what's now southern Mexico, near a spot that's tied to the dinosaur extinction story, Chicxulub crater. Everything close to the impact was zapped into vapor in a snap. Picture the biggest energy burst in ages, like 1 billion years or more. Nothing near the crash site stood a chance. Next, there was the aftershock. As the fireball cooled down, the Earth's surface went bonkers. The ground twisted and shook, causing unimaginable earthquakes. The continents became huge, bouncy castles. And then, the stuff that got blasted up by the impact came raining back down like a rainstorm. Even if you weren't near the huge pieces falling in Mexico, you'd get hit by these smaller, super hot bits flying through the air. This made the air so toasty that forests burst into flames all around the world. Are you ready for more? Time for a massive tsunami. The ocean floor got all churned up, pushing waves inland around the Gulf of Mexico. But just imagine, even all that wasn't enough to destroy all the dinosaurs. For example, dinos in New Zealand were pretty fine, but we know that they all went extinct. So what happened to them? They felt a little rumble, and suddenly, the sky started getting all dark and gloomy, as if it was nighttime. And hold up, what's that? A blanket of ash is slowly creeping around the whole planet. Now, here's where the real drama happens. The big problem with the asteroid crash wasn't the instant boom you might think. It's all about the long-term effects. Imagine the stuff that got blasted up into the sky blocking the sunlight. Days turn into nights, and temperatures drop very sharply. A lot of plant-eating dinosaurs passed away, and hunters were having a great feast, but not for too long. Without sunshine, the food chain falls apart very quickly. Then, the ash falls back to Earth. Things go from bad to worse. Other nasty stuff starts floating around in the air like carbon dioxide. This carbon dioxide mixed with shattered seafloor bits makes the temperature go wild. The Earth was playing hot and cold all at once. That's when somewhere between 50 and 80% of dinosaurs said goodbye forever. What's even more sad is that this number only counts the species themselves. If we look at the number of individual animal lives lost, it's even higher. You might think that at least the poor mammals finally got their chance after the dinos left. But even mammals had a tough time. We are very lucky that a few brave mammals managed to survive this crazy chaos. The ones who made it were like the little champs with speedy energy systems, flexible diets, or secret hideouts. But this story is only one hypothesis. Next, we have the volcanism hypothesis. Volcanoes. These fiery mountains are used to spitting out molten rock and causing epic destruction. But surprisingly, this theory isn't about explosive eruptions. Nope. It's about something sneakier and slower. Around 1 million years before the Dino Doom, there's this big change happening under the Earth's surface. Way below where India's floating, a rock river starts forming, heating things up. And then, India gets hit hard. It turns into a sea of lava, like a fiery ocean. It's like a gazillion of dump trucks filled with lava slowly pouring out. These solidified leftovers are known as the Deccan Traps, like a super deep layer of hard lava covering a piece of land the size of France. And just like in our asteroid story, the real trouble comes from the air. For hundreds of thousands of years, sulfur dioxide spread like an unstoppable shadow. It was making the sky gloomy and the rain toxic. Food sources turned into poison, and oceans became acid baths. And then carbon dioxide took the stage. It was like a temperature button, flipping the Earth's climate upside down. It was a roller coaster of chaos. The ecosystems were stressed, food chains snapped, and species waved goodbye one by one. Both theories seemed pretty realistic. All the experts were having a big debate about which theory was correct and why the dinos disappeared. So, what is the real answer? Unfortunately, we don't know. Some scientists support one theory, some support the other one. And we're left scratching our heads. But hey, don't be too hard on the media or the scientists. They're all doing their best to figure out the mystery of the dinosaurs' disappearance. And maybe one day, we'll finally learn the real answer. So, stay tuned.
If dinosaurs once ruled the Earth, it seems like we should stumble upon their bones everywhere. But we don't. Why is that? Aren't you curious? There's no conspiracy here. The truth is that the quest to find dino remains is much more complex than meets the eye. Yes, dinosaur bones are real, we found tons of them, and they've already been uncovered on every continent, despite many people arguing otherwise. And the uneven distribution of these prehistoric treasures is simply a quirk of nature. Turns out fossilization is an incredibly rare phenomenon. It only happens under specific conditions. When a dino bites the dust, the journey to fossilization begins. The carcass needs swift burial by sediment, followed by layers upon layers, creating a geological pressure cooker. Minerals sneak into the bones, morphing them into stone. This unique recipe predominantly occurs underwater, where sediments like sand and mud can gracefully cloak the fallen giants. Which is why dinos meeting their end above ground rarely end up as fossils. For example, we barely find any fossils of species who lived in the jungle, and especially in the mountains. Researchers reveal that many fossils arise from areas near lakes or rivers. Whether drowned before a flood or carried away by rain, these dinosaurs lucked out in fossil formation. These are the reasons why we don't discover dinos in every nook and cranny. The harsh reality is that we might never meet many dino species, all because of these limitations of fossilization. Around 71% of dinosaurs will never be discovered. We don't even know how many species we've lost due to unsuitable conditions. If we're super lucky, we might find some fossils of mountain dinosaurs in local rivers, but that's a very rare case. So yes, while dinosaurs graced the globe, all the fossils we found so far were due to great luck. Now, this makes you wonder how much dinosaurs lived in general. There are myths about them leading a tortoise-paced life. People believe that dinos were sauntering through centuries to achieve colossal sizes. Funny enough, the truth is exactly opposite. In reality, dinosaurs lived shortly and shone bright like rock stars. Unfortunately, once these animals hit the prime of reproduction, they often found themselves on the fast track to fossilization before reaching their full-size potential. What's interesting is that dinosaur life cycles align with the rhythm of trees. Perhaps you know that it's possible to determine how old the tree lived by its rings. It's true, each pair of light and dark rings equals 1 year of age. Like the rings tell us about trees, dinos' bones tell us about them. Researchers examine slices of bones under a microscope, analyzing different tissues to gauge growth rates. Thick rings mean rapid growth, and narrow ones mean a more leisurely pace. In the animal kingdom, bigger usually equals longer life. So, some people wonder whether big dinos actually live longer. Apparently so. Large sauropod dinosaurs, akin to ancient behemoths, likely took around 30 to 35 years to reach their colossal peak. Following that, they might have enjoyed a few more decades on the prehistoric stage. For smaller dinosaurs, like the nimble arthropods, life was a swift affair. They grew to their full size after around 4 to 5 years of life. But after a mere 3 to 4 years, these mini dinos, unless super fortunate, might have bid adieu. So it turns out many dinosaurs didn't live for hundreds of years. Most of them, even colossal ones, rarely marked even their 50s. It's a surprise if you compare them to today's giants like blue whales and elephants. These animals boast human life-like spans. Blue whales live for around 80 to 90 years, and many elephants make it to their 60s to 70s. And they're not as big as some dinosaurs. Yeah, it's a pity that they left our planet so early, and we don't have a chance to study so many of them. What's even sadder is that dinosaurs have been doomed from the beginning. Even if a random cosmic rock hadn't hit our planet, dinosaurs would still have gone extinct by today. The Chicxulub meteorite smashed into our planet 66 million years ago. For the record, it didn't actually destroy all the dinosaurs, only the non-avian ones. The rest became birds. Yep, some of these colossal creatures became tiny chickens and pigeons we see today. Guess they know what wolves might feel like. But even before that happened, the Earth was slowly preparing a catastrophe for them. Recent research shows that the era before the asteroid impact wasn't exactly a paradise. It was more like a brewing cauldron of environmental challenges. The scientists delved into the Deccan Traps, one of the largest volcanic regions in present-day West India. They came up with an innovative technique to study the past through volcanoes by measuring sulfur concentrations in rocks. That's how they learned that the Deccan Traps, spewing millions of cubic miles of molten rock, contributed to global climate shifts. Over 100,000 years before the infamous Chicxulub meteor struck, global temperatures might have plummeted by several degrees. This sudden drop was most likely triggered by sulfur emissions from the Deccan Traps. And this, in turn, led to pretty wild, unpleasant climate conditions. The Earth ended up experiencing volcanic winters. This made life super challenging for flora and fauna and set the stage for the eventual dinosaur extinction. So, even if there was no asteroid, dinos wouldn't survive for too long. For a long time, scientists have been arguing whether it was the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs or the volcanic activity. Finally, technology is developing, and we can use it to answer this question. An AI system developed by researchers offers its own perspective. Using over 100 processors fed with geological and climatic data, the AI explored the fossil records and over 300,000 possible scenarios to find the truth. And, according to the machine, the volcanic theory is far more plausible. It told the scientists that the climate changes required for a mass extinction were likely caused by the Deccan Traps alone, even without the asteroid impact. The volcanic eruptions coincided with the Cretaceous-Paleogene boundary, starting 300,000 years before the asteroid, and it continued for an extended period. This raised some questions about human versus AI judgment. Some scientists expressed skepticism and talked about the AI's potential bias. But the researchers who led the project are excited about the novelty of their method and its potential to explore other periods of Earth history. However, it will likely take some time for humans to build trust in AI. We already mentioned that non-avian dinosaurs survived this apocalyptic event. For some reason, neither volcanoes nor an asteroid wiped out everything on our planet. Many animals survived, evolving into mammals, and many plants continued to flourish. Plants went through this even better than animals, actually. A catastrophe bid farewell to about 75% of Earth's species, not to count all the individual losses. Yet, botanical wonders survived. Around 78% of our plant species owe their existence to their persistent ancestors. Unfortunately, plants don't turn into fossils as easily as animals do, and we already know that this process isn't quick or common either. So the researchers had to turn to evolutionary trees. They analyzed up to 73,000 surviving plant species. The findings revealed a remarkable narrative of evolution and dominance. Turns out, after the Great Extinction, these sneaky plants seized the opportunity, just like mammals who rose to prominence after the dinosaur era. Major orders, like those of mint, magnolia, and orchids, not only coexisted with dinosaurs, but thrived beyond the extinction. The secret to their success lies in how they could adapt for pollination. They didn't care whether they were pollinated by wind or insects or anything else. basically eating resources from anywhere they could find. Thanks to this awesome adaptability, which scientists call flower power, their legacy lives and flourishes today. Hundreds of dinosaur species roamed our planet, and researchers give a name to a new type approximately every 2 weeks. It's not fair to stick to T-Rex, Stegosaurus, Spinosaurus, and other famous sauruses all the time. They've had their chance to shine in the movies and across the internet. So let's check out dinosaurs that no one talks about. First on our list is Torosaurus. The special thing about this dinosaur is that it definitely had one of the largest skulls ever found. It was big because of this frill going from the back of the animal's skull and covering its neck. The frill wasn't there for protection. It was probably just to show off a bit. The bone in the frill was thin and full of holes. As you can see, it's very similar to Triceratops. There are still debates about whether these two are the same species, but more and more studies show that they were more like cousins. They were probably similar in size, but Torosaurus had a longer head with big openings, as well as longer frill bones with a groove on top. It also had more pairs of horns on the back of the frill. Some like to call Torosaurus a bull lizard. These fellas were plant eaters that may have lived in social groups. They existed at approximately the same age, but Torosaurus somehow ended up on the less popular side of the family. Kentrosaurus was a small stegosaurus. It's one of the least cuddly dinosaurs of all time. Its long, thin spikes seemed to be a pretty good defense mechanism. Stegosaurus, on the other hand, had shorter, thicker spikes that were less likely to bend or snap when the animal used them. Now, you wouldn't want to get anywhere near Kentrosaurus, though. Its tail could swing in a big half circle and hit with a force strong enough to break a human skull. Any volunteers? No? Okay. One scientist used scans of the dino's fossils to make a computer model of its skeleton. The model showed that Kentrosaurus had a flexible neck. It must have been really useful for looking around to see if something interesting was going on or if there was any dangerous animals trying to sneak up. Kentrosaurus typically walked on all 4 legs with straight hind limbs. The computer model tells us it could spread its front legs out to its sides, too. Maybe it was a way to protect its belly during fights. Stegosauruses, in general, had tails that were like big weights at the back of their bodies. That's why their balance point was closer to their hips. That's also the reason why they could easily stand on their hind legs and swing their tails around. So most people haven't heard of Heterodontosaurs, even though their fossils showed that dinosaurs got feathers way back before we thought and in groups where we didn't expect it. In 2008, paleontologists identified the first known skull of a baby Heterodontosaurus, which was less than 2 inches long, smaller than a tea bag. This baby dinosaur had relatively big eyes and a short snout compared to bigger ones of its kind. Now, what's really interesting is that some scientists used to think that Heterodontosaurus's tusks, like those of modern warthogs, only appeared when they were fully grown. But it seems they had them from the early stages of their life. Heterodontosaurs had 5 fingers on each hand, 2 of which were opposable. It was a good tool, considering the animal probably ate both plants and meat. Humans have different types of teeth, some for biting, some for chewing, and also canines. But most reptiles have just one kind of teeth. Heterodontosaurus was special because it had 3 different types of teeth: small peg-like ones, big teeth resembling canines, and square-shaped teeth that did the cutting job. Scientists are not entirely sure how this creature used these different types of teeth. Maybe it was for digging up roots, breaking into termite nests, or even defending themselves against dangerous animals. Okay, say this name with me now: Psittacosaurus. She was quite a common dinosaur in its time, but she never still gained popularity. Scientists found out that when these dinosaurs were young, they probably crawled, considering they had longer arms and short legs. But as they got older, between 4 and 6 years old, their hind legs started growing much faster and became much longer than their front legs. So, later in life, they likely didn't move on all fours anymore, but walked on 2 legs. Inside the stomach of one of these creatures, scientists found pebbles. This shows the animals either had a hard time digesting what it ate, or it didn't chew its food very well. Its beak looks quite familiar. That's how it got its specific name, a parrot lizard. It was really strong, and some believe the creature used it to crack and open tough nuts and seeds before the pebbles in its stomach helped mash them up for digestion. These guys might have been good at swimming. They had broad feet, and the shape of their tail could have helped them move in the water relatively easily. Some scientists even believe they might have spent most of their lives swimming in rivers and lakes. In 2004, researchers found something really sweet: 24 young parrot lizards huddled together. They were too big to be hatchlings, so it could be a bunch of teenagers who had left their nests and then formed a group where they could support one another and defend themselves better. But apparently, that plan didn't work out so well. Now, check this one out, Stygie Moloch, or as they call it, Styx demon. We're looking at a peaceful plant-eating creature with bony spikes and knobs on its skull. Most scientists believe it was a younger form of this fellow, even though they used to think they were a separate species. Stygie Moloch is smaller than its more popular cousin, but it's also more robust and has a pretty thick neck. This dinosaur, with small forelimbs and long hind legs 3 feet high, which is half as high as an average human. That doesn't sound dangerous in the world of giant and fierce dinosaurs, but the animal had a very thick skull roof. Maybe it wasn't the strongest tool to defend itself, but it probably helped in combat with rivals from its own species. They most likely headbutted to win the hearts of their chosen ones. But rivals from its own herd were a piece of cake compared to the predators that might have gone after it. After all, this dino lived at the same time as old T-Rex. Now, when someone tells you to picture a dinosaur, Chisaosaurus would probably be the last thing coming to your mind. It looks as if you've put together pieces of random animals and tried to make your friends believe this truly was a real animal that once roamed the earth. But it's actually a dino, with giant sharp claws on its forelimbs, a bulky body, and a long neck ending with a tiny head. Now, don't let the claws scare you though. These creatures didn't go after other animals since they were herbivores, but these claws could protect the animal from intruders and predators. The full scientific name of this creature describes it as a giant sloth-like reptile from China. This animal was one of the biggest and oldest members of the group where it belonged, which lived around 115 million years ago. No, I wasn't around then. At first, it was hard to tell which animals were related to this weird-looking dinosaur. But in the 1990s, scientists made a conclusion that they were modified plant-eating theropods, which is similar to carnivorous dinos. They also most likely had feathers and small wings, like some sort of a very big turkey.
Let's go with the widely accepted theory that a massive asteroid hitting our planet wiped out the dinosaurs. It does make you wonder why mammals made it though. One idea is that mammals were better prepared. Back then, they weren't the most popular creatures on Earth, but they were pretty diverse. They bred themselves into a huge range of species, and it might have saved them. Some said mammals survived because they were smaller, so they needed fewer resources. As they had to constantly hide from dinosaurs, they managed to survive in difficult environments, way before the hit. But let's say the asteroid never came, and it never damaged the environment the dinosaurs thrived in. It's safe to say our fauna would look different today. Take the mighty Titanosaur. It's considered the biggest land animal to ever exist, some reaching lengths of about 7 standard cars lined up. It had a neck so long that it would have needed a 2-story home just to fit. It also had a plant-based diet, so it ate from the ground, but from very tall trees too. There was nothing much left to eat for, say, the little Juramaya, a mammal that lived roughly at the same time, but was as small as a popsicle stick. Let's take this thought experiment a bit further and imagine we have a time machine that could transport today's mammals to the time of the dinosaurs. Some scientists say they have gotten bigger, so there's a chance they could survive, right? They're also much more evolved in terms of their diets and skills. Others say definitely not. They couldn't survive, mostly because they're too small to compete with dinosaurs. An adult T-Rex was just about the size of a bus. It probably wouldn't waste its time trying to capture food that's human-sized, for instance. They'd probably be on the lookout for prey the size of a car, or even bigger, like an elephant. And it most likely wouldn't take them long to win the fight. Sure, a T-Rex might munch on something smaller too, but only if it's really hungry and has no other alternative. If we had no choice but to send some mammals back in hopes they could survive, what would be our best bet? Some say the chimpanzee could be a good candidate, as these primates build their sleeping nests higher up in trees. This might have kept them safe from the carnivore dinosaurs living on land. There's no real evidence of dinosaurs being able to fly, but we do know there might have been some reptiles that took to the sky for transportation. Like pterosaurs, the flying lizard. These ones like to eat fish and smaller animals, but who's to say they wouldn't pick up a chimpanzee given the opportunity? Another good candidate might be the hyena. Today, the spotted hyena is the most common big carnivore in Africa, and it's highly adaptable. They could snatch up all sorts of prey by themselves or even in larger units. They can digest most parts of their prey, including the skin and bones. These animals aren't picky eaters, and they wouldn't mind chewing on parts that other creatures would gladly skip on. Not to mention, they'll eat fruits too, if needed. Hyenas are overall healthy and sturdy animals, with some studies showing they hardly ever get health problems. But like any other animal on this planet, the hyenas also have their weaknesses. We still don't know why these creatures can't be found in Europe anymore. But some research suggests they found it hard to coexist with humans and wolves. Also, they're not very adapted to living in forests. Orcas might have been able to rub elbows with the dinosaurs too. These creatures also don't have any natural predators, which earned them the nickname the wolves of the sea. That's because they go out looking for prey the same way wolves do, in groups. Orcas may be related to dolphins, but we can hardly call them friendly, as there have been cases of them sinking ships on purpose. They're highly intelligent animals that spend time together and are very organized. They also do this thing where they often take down more prey than they're prepared to eat. It may be because they see this experience as training. Other theories suggest orcas are so intelligent that they look for food in advance, even though they're not hungry yet. It might also be because whenever they want something to munch on, they're looking for the best quality food there is. The reason why they might not survive in the dinosaur era, though, is the global temperature. Back in the Mesozoic era, our planet was seriously hotter, several degrees warmer than it is today. Orcas prefer living in colder waters, but you'll find them in all oceans and most seas. Ostriches are the no-brainer answer. Look at them. They're practically dinosaurs. They even have a long-lost dino cousin that lived in the Cretaceous era, called the Struthiomimus. Its name translates to ostrich-like because of its similar powerful and speedy legs, agility, and even feathers. On the downside, they might not be able to take down larger dinosaurs. The vegetation back in the Mesozoic era would have been different too. Conifers used to dominate land, and ostriches are known to be pretty picky eaters, so they might have had a difficult time finding food back then. There are plenty of reasons to send felines through that time machine too. In the Jurassic period, for example, There were plenty of slow-moving prey to eat and tons of hiding spots in the thick bushes. Felines are sneaky animals, have precise vision, and are extremely good at climbing. Some pack a punch for their size, making them fierce fighters. Lions are good contenders because of their speed and teamwork. They might be able to take down some decent-sized dinosaurs, like the Europasaurus, when working together. Leopards are really good at climbing trees, so they could snatch prey and enjoy it above the ground, where they might be safe from bigger predators. What might be their downfall is, again, the temperature difference. It was considerably hotter back then. Today's large mammals aren't equipped to deal with that extreme heat. Lions might be the kings of the savannah now, but it would be too hot even for them. If they ever want to grab a spiky-tailed herbivore for lunch, like the Tugiangosaurus or Stegosaurus, they might be in for a surprise. One hit from their extremely powerful tail could cause some serious damage. Not to mention run-ins with raptors, like the frightening Saurophaganix. The single most likely animal that might survive being roommates with the dinosaurs is the platypus. This quirky Aussie creature is one of those rare egg-laying mammals. It's a fan of freshwater and as close to a living relic as an animal can be. Scientists were able to trace its origin back as far as 120 million years ago. For food, it wields its sensitive beak to catch shrimp and worms underwater. When it dives, skin flaps cover its eyes and ears, so it becomes blind and deaf. But it still uses that beak like a high-tech radar. A grown platypus can even feast on half its body weight in a single night. Scientists have known for a while it shares many traits with reptiles, like its shoulder bones or the fact that it lays eggs. Other creatures that coexisted with the dinosaurs still exist today, just not mammals. Snakes made their way into our fauna in those prehistoric times too, as well as cockroaches and bees. Some species of sharks are even considered to predate the dinosaurs. And if we look at our entire planetary history, we'll see they survived 4 out of 5 periods of mass extinction. Horseshoe crabs have the nickname living fossils because their evolution was much slower than any other animal that we know of. Not because they're not smart, but simply because they found their perfect form much sooner. So they didn't need to make a lot of changes. They have a very rudimentary immune system, but it seems to work wonders. No wonder they stayed pretty much the same for over 400 million years.
About 800,000 years ago, I wasn't around then, a gigantic asteroid soared through space and plummeted toward Earth. It slammed into our planet with enormous force. It blanketed 10% of Earth with shiny black and green lumps of rocky debris known as tektites. Tektites are pieces of rock that get liquefied by the heat of a meteorite impact. Then they cool down to look like dark, glassy pebbles. A trail of these tektites was strewn across Southeast Asia and reached all the way to eastern Antarctica. This is how scientists know this giant meteorite crash happened. Well, researchers spent nearly 100 years trying to find the gigantic crater caused by the impact. But tektites were too widespread. That's why they couldn't pinpoint the exact location, until recently. A team of experts from different universities tried to discover the ground zero of the meteorite impact. They investigated several craters in China and Cambodia, but none seemed to be created by a meteorite crash. The experts then decided to investigate Laos. It's a country where they discovered the largest and most concentrated number of tektites. After ruling out all visible craters, the team came up with a new theory. What if the crater is hidden by something? In search of the potential crater, the scientists measured gravity readings at different locations all across Laos. At the site of an ancient volcanic eruption, below thick, dense layers of cooled volcanic lava, they discovered a severe gravitational anomaly. It turned out to be a large, elongated crater, over 300 feet deep and spreading 8 miles wide and 11 miles long. Based on the location and the crater's enormous size, scientists believe this is the impact site of the ancient meteorite. Meanwhile, over 2 billion years ago, long before the age of dinosaurs, Earth was struck by one of the largest asteroids to ever hit our planet. The asteroid was approximately 6 to 9 miles across and created the biggest impact crater on Earth. This is the Vredefort crater. You can find it in present-day South Africa. When it was formed, it had a gigantic diameter of 186 miles. Over the centuries, the massive crater slowly eroded away into the Vredefort Dome. That's a rocky hill formation that was the central site of the asteroid's impact. This formation is so large that it can be seen from space. Today, the Vredefort Dome is a recognized World Heritage Site. It's also home to several towns and communities that encourage tourists to come and visit the ancient crater. In 1943, one pilot strayed from his regular flight path to avoid dangerous weather conditions. Flying over Quebec, Canada, he spotted a large, perfectly circular basin. That is how the Pingualuit crater was discovered. Around 1.4 million years ago, a meteorite hit this spot, creating this small but deep impact crater. It has a diameter of 2 miles and a depth of 1,300 feet. A lake of deep blue water has formed at the bottom of the crater. It's said that this lake contains some of the purest water in the world as it has no inlets or outlets. It means that the lake is only filled by rains and melting snow. The lake is home to one species of fish, the Arctic char. The Sudbury Basin is also in Canada. Formed over 1.8 billion years ago, it's one of the largest and oldest impact craters in the world. It's located in Ontario, but the impact from the collision was so powerful that debris from it was found 500 miles away in Minnesota. Unlike most impact craters that have a circular shape, the Sudbury Basin is an oval. It's 39 miles long with a width of 19 miles. The original impact site might have been a whopping 10 miles deep, but its modern-day version is much shallower. The asteroid that created the basin carried a high concentration of natural minerals. This made the soil in the crater incredibly fruitful. Today, its floor is home to numerous fruit and vegetable farms. The unique crater formation of Sudbury Basin was used to train Apollo astronauts before they embarked on their missions to the Moon. Perhaps the most famous meteorite of all is the Chicxulub. That's the meteorite responsible for wiping out 75% of all plant and animal life on Earth, including the dinosaurs. The Chicxulub meteorite had a diameter of 6 miles when it struck Earth 66 million years ago. The crater now lies off the coast of Mexico, hidden deep beneath the seabed. It's around 93 miles across and 12 miles in depth. Recently, scientists managed to drill deep down into the highest peak of the impact crater to collect rock samples. They discovered that the disappearance of dinosaurs wasn't caused by the giant size of the meteorite or the scale of the blast. It was because of the exact location where the Chicxulub hit Earth. The meteorite struck part of our planet that was densely filled with a mineral compound called gypsum. It's a soft sulfate mineral that is typically used as a fertilizer. The collision blasted so much sulfur into the air that it blocked out the sun. This caused the prolonged dark winter that doomed the dinosaurs. One of the youngest craters on Earth is the Barringer crater in Winslow, Arizona. The Barringer crater is also one of the best preserved craters on Earth. It was formed 50,000 years ago when a heavy meteorite made mostly of iron plummeted down from space. Earth's atmosphere barely slowed down the massive chunk of metal. It collided with the ground with incredible force. The meteorite vaporized upon impact, leaving very few remains. The crater left by this powerful explosion was named after the man who identified it in 1903. It was a mining engineer named Daniel Barringer. The diameter of the crater is 3,900 feet and it goes 560 feet deep. The Barringer family still owns the impact site to this day. You can visit the crater and take a guided tour around its rim. The Papagai crater in Siberia is one of the most interesting craters on Earth. An asteroid impact over 35 million years ago formed this massive basin. The crater is 62 miles across, which makes it the fourth largest one in the world. This crater is unique as it's home to one of the largest diamond deposits in the world. The intense pressure from the collision transformed the graphite at the impact site into diamonds. Scientists say that the crater contains trillions of carats of diamonds, but no one has ever mined them due to the site's remote location and lack of infrastructure. In the year 1530 BCE, a meteoroid entered Earth's atmosphere before shattering into pieces. The meteorite's burning fragments rained down on Earth and crashed into the planet's surface. As a result, a group of craters appeared on a small Estonian island, Saaremaa. The largest crater is a 360-foot wide perfect circle. It's 70 feet deep and filled with blue water. 8 smaller craters that appeared during the collision can be found within a half-mile radius of the largest crater. The impact of the meteorite fragments caused the trees on the islands to catch fire. Almost all forests burned down. Luckily, the woodlands have now grown back, and the craters are a popular hiking destination for tourists. A meteorite struck the area we now know as Quebec, Canada, around 200 million years ago. This collision created the 6th largest impact crater in the world. It had a diameter of 40 miles. Over the century, the outer rim of the crater has filled up with water. It's now known as Manicouagan Reservoir. The impact crater lake is so large it can be seen from space, and its strange shape gave the lake its nickname, the Eye of Quebec. The oldest meteorite crater in the world is in Western Australia. The Yarabuba crater is 2.2 billion years old. Well, that gets my vote for the best crater name. The impact site is so ancient that the original crater has completely eroded away. Yarabuba's diameter was around 19 to 43 miles. Scientists managed to figure out the age of the impact site by analyzing the ancient crystals and minerals found within the crater.
For years, we've thought the megalodon was just a big shark, which is scary enough. After all, it could have eaten a creature the size of a whale in just 5 bites. Estimates indicate that the largest shark that ever lived had been around 59 feet long, which is a reasonable size and explains a lot. But the scientific community was wrong. Very wrong. Now, scientists have proven that megalodons could grow up to 80 feet long, which is the same as a 6-story building. The creature would have certainly been dozens of times bigger than you if you had seen it underwater. These giants ruled the ancient oceans between about 20 million and 3 million years ago. And even though it was a long time ago, they've left a lasting impression, becoming the protagonists of many movies. And scientists continue to search for answers about their life. Thanks to this, we still occasionally find their fossils. But the thing is, no one has ever found a complete skeleton. All we have are scattered vertebrae, a few scales, and, of course, those massive, razor-sharp teeth. The most complete piece we know of is a 36-foot section of a megalodon's spine. It was once part of the trunk of the animal's body. So, to assess just how big the megalodon was, experts compared its fossils to more than 150 species of sharks, both those that are alive and those that have gone extinct, to get the most realistic result possible. If the megalodon had had the proportions of a regular shark, it would have had a 6-foot head and a 12-foot tail. It would have also stretched 54 feet from nose to fin. But these measurements are way off the mark. The largest megalodon vertebra ever found is 9 inches in diameter, which makes it 3 inches larger than the largest vertebra of a typical shark. And if we follow these proportions, that megalodon was a whopping 80 feet long. To better understand how giant this is, just think of 2 school buses lined up end to end. For a long time, it was very common to think that the megalodon was just a giant great white shark. And it makes sense, right? I mean, both would have had large, terrifying, serrated teeth. But that was another completely wrong idea. Now, we know that megalodons were actually much more slender and aerodynamic than the modern great white shark. Their body shape was built to cut through the water with much less resistance, minimizing the effects of gravity in the sea, letting them glide effortlessly through the ocean. Now, if Megalodon wasn't just another great white shark, what other animal of the same species was it most similar to? Surprise! In fact, it had more in common with the modern lemon shark. This species has robust and powerful bodies, 2 large dorsal fins, and blunt snouts, which makes them really fast and agile hunters, like prehistoric predators. In other words, while thinking about the megalodon, you can imagine a giant, turbocharged lemon shark. This is the most modern comparison of the megalodon with another animal, unless scientists find a complete skeleton of the ancient shark. But it's not common to find complete shark skeletons. They're rare because they're actually made not of bone but of soft, coated cartilage, like the stuff in human noses and ears. Their teeth are the boniest part of their bodies, and it's the reason why we've found so many of them. Yet, a complete skeleton is like scattered puzzle pieces to us. There's no solid bone to hold these pieces together, so the whole thing is very vulnerable to falling apart. Still, it's actually possible for an entire shark skeleton to survive. In these cases, very specific natural phenomena have to come into play. The skeleton needs to get buried super fast in mud or sediment, free of any kind of scavengers and away from ocean currents. Otherwise, it simply disintegrates before it can fossilize. Interestingly, although the sea is the home of these animals, it is possible to find their skeletons on land too. Millions of years ago, a big portion of today's dry land was submerged, teeming with marine life. Then, in certain places, sedimentary minerals and specific biological conditions of the seabed allowed the fossilization of sharks in marine rocks. Today, those are desert rocks that ensure the preservation of shark fossils. But in any case, searching for a shark tooth in a desert is like looking for a needle in a haystack. But finding an entire fossilized skeleton embedded in a rock is like hitting the jackpot. Another unexpected discovery is that these prehistoric sharks were not born small and cute like regular baby sharks. A newborn megalodon could reach almost 13 feet in length. That's more than twice the height of the average human. Imagine a shark the size of a boat from the moment it's born. Now, although we don't have all the information about the giant of the seas, it's a fact that it's one of the most famous animals in pop culture worldwide. Not only has it inspired several movies, but some people also insist that the megalodon is still alive. Scientists say it's not. The megalodon didn't survive the test of time, and it would be impossible for such a giant creature to dwell in the seas without us noticing it. First, it was a super predator. It hunted whales, dolphins, and other large marine animals. If the Meg was still around, its presence would completely change the balance in the oceans. It would have huge impacts on marine ecosystems, regulating populations and influencing the size and behavior of the ancient shark's prey. A good example is whales. They wouldn't have grown so big if the Meg still hunted in the oceans. This only happened because there was no super predator in the way. If the giant shark was still in our oceans, species like the blue whale would be tiny, as they would need to develop and adapt to be able to escape constant attacks. The lives of the workers of the sea would also be completely different. Fishers would have to avoid certain areas, ships would change routes, and even maritime tourism would be risky. Going for a swim and coming across a shark over 65 feet long? Not worth the risk. Plus, if the megalodon was still out there, we would have some proof. Commercial fishing catches millions of sharks every year, and a monster of this size would not go unnoticed. Not to mention that with all of today's technology such as drones, satellites, and submarines at our disposal, someone would have already recorded an encounter with this living legend. By the way, most sharks, like most fish, are cold-blooded. But the reality for Megalodon was different. This giant was able to keep its body warmer than the surrounding ocean. This gave it an advantage over other sea creatures, allowing it to remain fast and active even in colder waters. It was a survival advantage that other animals of its kind did not acquire during their evolution. One of the most famous theories is that the Meg lives in the Mariana Trench, but scientists are sure that it doesn't make any sense. This region is poor in food and has many tiny creatures, which would not be nearly enough to sustain a large predator. In addition, there's a lot of research studying countless sharks that live in the ocean depths, and none of them come close to the size of the megalodon. So, does the megalodon still exist? Definitely not, but that doesn't mean it isn't any less mysterious and fascinating.
Scientists found an entire city of Gyangola that was hidden beneath the dense jungles of Mexico for 600 years. It covers 360 hectares, had over 1,000 buildings, 2.5 miles of defensive walls, a network of internal roads, and a well-planned urban layout with temples and ball courts, and separate neighborhoods for the elites and commoners. For centuries, people believed there was just an abandoned fortress there, based on stories passed on from generation to generation. Until recently, there was no way to see how truly huge it was without spending years on the ground. But thanks to the new technology, a remote sensing tool called LiDAR, they got a 3D model of the area in just 2 hours from a plane. Gyangola was built between the years 1350 and 1521. It was a crucially important place for the Zapotec people, a group that had lived in the area since around 700 BCE. In Gyangola, families lived together in homes with big patios in the middle, surrounded by rooms. When families got bigger, they built more rooms and made their homes larger. The study found that both the leaders and regular people worked together to make the city better. Because Gyangola was surrounded by mountains, they used this land wisely and built their houses in a way that fit the slopes and let rainwater flow naturally. This helped keep their homes safe and strong. They were built so well that many of these buildings are still standing, even after hundreds of years. There are 2 pyramids in the center of the city. They may have been used as temples where the priests celebrated rites and ceremonies to their deities. The priests brought offerings to the altars, and the people assembled at the 2 squares that are now sunken. Then, there is also a palace with 64 rooms, some of them with circular columns on several sloped terraces. There are patios with many stairways all connected to each other. The sensing tool also found a round-shaped lookout point on a natural rock, where the Zapotec people could see their foes approaching from a distance. Researchers also noticed 2 circular structures that could have been used to watch the stars and measure time. They also found some tombs, so there was most definitely a city cemetery. By the end of the 1400s, the Zapotec people controlled a large territory on the Pacific coast and had successfully defended their land from the Aztecs, who were trying to take over more territory. They did the almost impossible and survived a 7-month-long siege at Gyangola. When they won this conflict and kept control of the southern part of Mesoamerica, the Zapotecs didn't need to live in Gyangola anymore. Staying in the mountains had its pros, but they needed fresh water and good farmland to grow food. The small city of Tehuantepec, just 12 miles away, had these conditions, so they moved there just before the Spanish arrived in 1521. Over time, Zapotec traditions started to fade, but their culture didn't disappear completely, and more than 300,000 Zapotec people still live in Oaxaca state in Mexico. They speak their own languages and keep their traditions alive. Creating the 3D model of the lost city is just the beginning of the research. Archaeologists hope that future studies of Gyangola will help us learn more about how the Zapotecs were organized, how they ruled their cities, and how they interacted with the Spanish when they arrived. They plan to study all 1,100 buildings found in the LiDAR scan, and it will take a few years. Instead of digging up the ruins, they will use special technology to scan the land and learn more about the city without damaging it. This same tech helped scientists find another massive ancient city that lay hidden beneath the thick green canopy of the Amazon forest. A whole network of houses, plazas, roads, and canals was hiding in the shadow of a mighty volcano. For centuries, many scientists assumed that ancient Amazonian people lived in tiny huts, clearing patches of land to survive. But this city, built 2,500 years ago and inhabited for 1,000 years, proves the opposite. Now, scientists think tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people lived in complex urban societies. Scanning the area found 6,000 rectangular platforms, each measuring around 66 by 33 feet, and standing 6 to 9 feet high. These structures were arranged in clusters around central plazas, with straight roads with perfect right angles and paths connecting them. One of the roads was 16 miles long. Building straight roads like this is far harder than just following the landscape. Some of these roads may have had deep spiritual or ceremonial significance. The volcano's rich soil helped the civilization thrive, but it may also have led to its downfall. Researchers also found signs of threats to the cities, such as ditches that blocked entrances to the settlements. Maybe some people living nearby were trying to get in. The next step for the researchers will be studying the adjoining 116 square miles to know more about this large, complex society that could be bigger than the well-known Mayan societies in Mexico and Central America. Meanwhile, in 1963, a man in Turkey discovered an ancient city while renovating his own house. He knocked down a wall in his basement and found a mysterious room. He kept digging and saw a tunnel. It led to the Derinkuyu underground city. It's one of the deepest multi-level underground settlements in Cappadocia and in all of Turkey. The inhabitants lived on 8 levels and had access to cellars, storage areas, chapels, a school, a study room, and other structures. All floors were connected by an extensive network of tunnels. The underground city was probably built as a shelter. The construction is hiding at 279 feet deep, and you can't see it from the outside. The complex was large enough to shelter about 20,000 people with their livestock and food supplies. There was also a 180-foot ventilation shaft. Archaeologists believe that Phrygians first built the levels. The Romans used and enhanced the structure later. The golden time of Derinkuyu was during the Byzantine era. The next lost and found city appeared only in a few inscriptions and ancient texts, so no one could be sure it really existed. Scientists searched the majority of the coast of Egypt until one archaeologist and his team detected a colossal face looking at them from under the water. The ancient city of Thonis Heraklion was discovered completely submerged 4 miles off Alexandria's coast. In the ruins of the lost city, there were 64 ships, 700 anchors, and a treasure trove of gold coins. Archaeologists believe the 16-foot-tall statue and the temple remains are the most important findings discovered by the expedition. Back then, the city had ceremonies and celebrations that took place in the Temple of Ammon. The ruins and artifacts were made from granite and diorite, so they were in good condition even after having been in contact with water for centuries. They give people a glimpse into what life was like 2,300 years ago in one of the most important trade ports of the world. The city had a network of canals, sort of like an ancient Egyptian Venice. The canals linked many separate harbors and anchorages. Towers, temples, houses, and other structures were also linked by bridges. Thonis Heraklion was the country's main port for international trade and the collection of taxes. No one really knows how the city ended up submerged, but archaeologists connect it with natural causes. At the end of the 2nd century BCE, most probably after a flood, it got covered with water. Then Alexandria, the city founded by Alexander the Great, became more glorious than Heraklion. Before Alexandria's fame, Heraklion was the main port of entry to Egypt. So after the tragedy, many ships heading for Heraklion had to change their route and go to Alexandria. Heraklion lost its glory until its discovery in 2000. Scientists have finally solved the Loch Ness Monster mystery. Here's the spoiler, you ready? It's not a real monster. It's probably a dinosaur that survived through the ages, or just a bunch of debris floating on the water. Thanks to many findings on the Loch Ness creature, we have proof of another story to tell you. It was 1933 when a man named George Spicer and his wife were driving along the shores of Loch Ness. That's when they saw something massive with a long neck moving across the road. It looked like a creature straight out of the prehistoric era, a dinosaur-like beast unlike anything they'd ever seen. That was the moment that Loch Ness Monster theories started spreading around like wildfire. One of the most famous Loch Ness Monster sightings came just a year later, in 1934, when a man took a photograph that became the most well-known image of Nessie. That's the nickname she was given. She? Anyways, the photo, known as the surgeon's photograph, showed a long-necked creature rising out of the water, and for years it convinced people that the monster was real. But years later, the truth came out. One of the men who helped take the photo confessed it was all a hoax. The photo had been staged after all. When the photo was published, it had been significantly cropped. This made the animal in the picture look much bigger than in real life, fueling the theories that the Loch Ness Monster did in fact exist. In the 1960s, one of the first big scientific attempts to investigate the mystery of the Loch Ness Monster happened. A research team took sonar equipment to the lake and spent hours scanning the waters in search of evidence of large creatures. What they found was puzzling. They recorded several objects moving deep in the loch, or lake, with no clear explanation as to what it was. Though the team didn't manage to capture anything definitive, this sighting helped fuel the belief that there was indeed something massive living in Loch Ness. After that, research about the mystery of the Loch Ness Monster kept popping up. In 1972, with the help of underwater photography, some researchers managed to capture strange images, which got people's hopes up for a minute. But the truth is, this early research about the Loch Ness Monster was far from conclusive. Now, of course, not everyone bought into the mystical, magical theories about the Loch Ness Monster. Theory 1, from a professor of zoology at Oxford University, has made it clear that the monster is a biological impossibility. Hey, my pediatrician said that about me, too. Meanwhile, he says that no skeletal remains have ever been found in the region. Plus, no fishermen have ever caught anything resembling the creature in their fishing nets. For him, this works as proof that it simply can't be real. When it comes to the famous photos of the Loch Ness Monster as evidence, well, that's pretty simple. The professor offers a more down-to-earth explanation. He argues that these images are either showing floating debris or birds, like cormorants, which have long necks and often appear to be low in the water. When people refute his suggestion, he takes us back to human psychology and explains that people often make mistakes and misjudge the size of things, especially when they just caught a glimpse of it, and even more so when they are hoping to see something specific. Now, many of those alleged photos depict an animal with a long neck and a small head, which has led some to believe that what they're seeing is a plesiosaur, a giant marine reptile that lived 215 million years ago and disappeared with the dinosaurs. The idea of a plesiosaur surviving all these years is a theory that's been around since the first sightings of the creature. But this researcher isn't buying it. He explains that no plesiosaur fossils have been found in the region dating to anything later than 66 million years ago. The idea of a prehistoric creature still lurking in the waters of Loch Ness just doesn't hold up scientifically. Then there's theory number 2, from a British naturalist who has spent over 50 years investigating the Loch Ness Monster phenomenon. His conclusion is a little less dramatic. He believes that most people who report sightings of long-necked creatures are misidentifying other animals. He suggests people think they are seeing a sea serpent. Reports of sightings from the Loch Ness Monster have been around since the 6th century CE, long before they were distilling Scotch whiskey or other explanations. Early reports of these sea serpents describe large creatures with long snake-like bodies and multiple humps. Some say the creatures were as big as boats, and many swore they saw something swimming in the waters. Many of these early sea serpent sightings may have been misunderstandings or exaggerations of normal animals in the loch, like large fish or even swimming birds. They could have been large eels, which are known to live in Loch Ness. These eels, especially when they're moving, might have given the impression of a long, undulating creature in the water. People who saw these eels from a distance, particularly in low light or misty conditions, might have mistaken them for something much more mysterious. Theory number 3 says something else. Nessie is just a series of standing waves. These happen when two boat wakes move in opposite directions, creating a big hump in the water that could look like a creature from a distance. Loch Ness enthusiasts even showed how it works, with footage from Fort Augustus, where a river meets Loch Ness. These enthusiasts had big plans to use drones with infrared cameras and special underwater microphones to search the loch. Now, Loch Ness is massive, stretching around 23 miles long and more than 700 feet deep. So they thought they needed drones and infrared cameras to put an end to this discussion. But despite everything, they haven't found Nessie. But it's not only the Loch Ness Monster that lacks scientific explanation. There have also been scores of sightings of Yetis and Sasquatches that no one can really explain. Folks have made movies, dreaming of finding the truth about these creatures. But, according to recent research and evidence, it looks unlikely that we'll ever find definitive evidence of their existence. Science says they can explain Sasquatch sightings, and this is how. Biologists who study wildlife using camera traps, which are set up in remote areas to capture images of passing animals, have long attempted to find elusive species. These cameras detect movement and snap pictures, providing invaluable data on the biodiversity of different ecosystems. As camera traps collect more photos over time, the number of species recorded grows. However, after a while, the number plateaus, suggesting that no new species are being detected. While it's impossible to claim 100% certainty, researchers say that after significant camera deployment, it's safe to say the likelihood of discovering new species, especially large ones like Bigfoot or the Yeti, drops significantly. Camera trap studies have been running for years in regions where these creatures are rumored to live, but so far, no conclusive evidence has surfaced. Instead, the supposed proof of Bigfoot or the Yeti often comes from blurry photos or shaky videos taken by individuals who claim to have encountered them. The scientific understanding of biology also makes the existence of Bigfoot highly unlikely. Often described as a great ape, Bigfoot would have had to evolve in North America. However, great apes evolved in Africa, and the only great ape to make it to the Americas is Homo sapiens, whose ancestors crossed the Bering Strait only about 16,000 years ago. This is far too short a time for a new species like Bigfoot to have evolved. While it may be disappointing for these mysterious creature enthusiasts, the scientific evidence points firmly toward the conclusion that creatures like Bigfoot and the Yeti are more fantasy than reality. After decades of extensive scientific research, it's safe to say that yes, science has solved the mystery of the Loch Ness Monster, and it's pure fiction. So, what do you think?
This area might just be the most important spot in America right now, as it is worth over $1 trillion. There's something incredibly valuable hidden right here at Thacker Pass, and it is going to shake things up, not just in Nevada, but in the U.S. economy and its global relations. The McDermott Caldera is a massive area, about 28 miles long by 22 miles wide, stretching across northern Nevada and southern Oregon. It's in Humboldt County, a quiet, rural place with just one main city that's going to change a lot in the next 5 to 10 years. That's because they found white gold there. We're talking about lithium. And to explain why this metal is so important, we need a scale. On one side, we place a chunk of lithium, and on the other, an apple. What do you think will happen? If both have the same volume, the scale is going to tip toward the apple. That's because lithium is super light. Its density is about 0.3 ounces per cubic inch, which makes it the lightest solid you can find at room temperature. Lithium is also extremely reactive. That means it combines with other elements very easily, and it can catch fire just as easily. Mix it with water, fire. Expose it to air, yep, fire again. But when you combine its lightness with its high reactivity, you get a material that's perfect for batteries, like the one powering your smartphone, laptop, or even your electric car. Nevada's been hiding this treasure for about 16 million years. The McDermott Caldera used to be a volcanic hotspot, spewing molten rock and creating a huge lake filled with mineral-rich waters. Over time, that lake dried up, leaving behind thick layers of clay loaded with lithium. Right now, Thacker Pass Mine is sitting on one of the biggest untapped lithium reserves in the world, worth about $1.5 trillion. If everything goes as planned, they expect it to produce about 40,000 tons of high-quality lithium a year. And that's enough to make batteries for up to 800,000 electric cars. Like I mentioned earlier, this metal is the backbone of modern batteries. And with the world racing toward green energy, the demand for lithium is skyrocketing. Since 2020, its price has gone up more than 10 times, making it the most expensive battery metal in the world. That means it's way more expensive than magnesium, nickel, cobalt, and other materials used in rechargeable batteries. Right now, we're using about 1.16 million tons of lithium per year, and roughly 85% of it goes into making batteries, mostly for cars. Between 2030 and 2040, experts think we will need to double the money we're putting into production, from $94 billion to $188 billion. At the same time, investment in batteries will jump by over 200%, reaching $686 billion. Finally, by 2050, the demand for lithium is expected to be more than 10 times higher than what we're producing now. Sorry, I know that's a lot of numbers, but I just want to show how important Thacker Pass will be for the whole world. This mine is going to be key to keeping everything running. I mean, literally, since most of the future demand will be for things like cars, electric bikes, scooters, and renewable energy storage. Nevada could also be the epicenter of a global energy revolution, with the US aiming to cut pollution by 50% by 2030. A big part of that is replacing gas-powered vehicles with electric ones. And to make that happen, America is going to need a whole lot more lithium than it's producing right now. Nowadays, most of the metal used in the United States come from countries like Chile and Argentina. So if America wants to be a leader in this market, it really needs to invest more and more in projects like Thacker Pass. But there's another challenge. Finding lithium in a mine is one thing, but refining it is another story. Just like diamonds are carefully cut and shaped to bring out their sparkle and sold in rings and necklaces, something similar needs to be done with lithium. The raw material that comes from the mines has to be refined into a pure form that can actually be used in things like batteries. And China pretty much dominates this part of the market, and they're responsible for about 75% of global lithium-ion battery production. In other words, it doesn't matter if a country finds this powerful metal on its land, it will probably still need China to help refine it. So, the US is eager to strengthen its supply chain. In fact, they're so excited about this possibility that authorities have invested over $2 billion in loans into the Nevada project. Because of that, Thacker Pass could make the US a leader in lithium production worldwide. If their estimates are right, the McDermott caldera could hold nearly half of the world's known lithium reserves. It would almost double the reserves found in Bolivia's salt flats, for example, which used to hold the record for the world's largest deposit. This discovery is about to change Humboldt County for good. Those quiet streets surrounded by nature will never feel the same again. The mine will need about 2,000 workers who will probably move there from other cities. Those workers will need houses, hospitals, schools for their kids, and all the necessary services. Do you see how it's like a ripple effect? For every person hired to work on the project during construction, 6 more people will get hired in the state to support them. Thacker Pass is also going to have a huge impact on the economy, not just in Nevada, but all across the country. People expect the mine to be active for 35 years, and each year, it's expected to generate over $2 billion. But here's the thing. In Thacker Pass, they'll be extracting lithium from clay, and this process has never been done on such a huge scale before. So it's kind of a hit or miss. But if it works, it could completely change the industry. Big question. Who's interested in all this? Well, we've got 3 big companies eyeing the lithium market in the US. First, there's ExxonMobil. The oil giant wants to start producing lithium by 2027, and they have plans to become the top supplier for electric vehicles by 2030. Then there's General Motors, the company behind big car brands like Chevrolet and Cadillac. They're so interested in this business that they agreed to pay $625 million for a 38% stake in Thacker Pass. And finally, Tesla. In 2023, they started building a factory in Texas to process lithium. It's all part of their plan to handle more of their supply chain themselves. Now that you know how important lithium is, you might be wondering, what if we run out? Well, that could happen, since it comes from mining and, just like gold, is a finite resource. But that doesn't mean we'd have to give up smartphones or electric cars. If we ever run out of this metal, we'd probably find new ways to produce batteries. In fact, some experts think thermal batteries could be the next big thing. They store extra energy from renewable resources like wind or solar power, which are very cheap. So they represent a new way of storing energy at a small fraction of the cost. Nowadays, they're primarily used for powering the production of steel, cement, and chemicals. Thermal batteries are also being used to heat and cool large buildings. However, more and more projects are focusing on bringing this technology into private spaces, like houses and apartments. Experts are optimistic that initiatives like these could make thermal batteries as well known as electric batteries, and they might soon become a regular part of our daily lives.